The grand hall of the Istrian palace sparkled with crystalline light, refracting through massive prismatic windows and dancing across the assembled alien nobility. Commander Kai Jensen stood at rigid attention, the sole human in a sea of blue-skinned Istrian aristocrats. His military posture betrayed nothing of his inner tension. The human envoy approaches the celestial throne, announced the court herald, voice echoing through the cavernous chamber. Kai advanced with measured steps. 6 months of intensive diplomatic training had prepared him for this moment. Earth's first official audience with Queen Illyria of the Istrian Empire. What the briefings hadn't conveyed was her commanding presence. Queen Illyria sat upon a throne carved from a single massive opal. Her skin was the deep azure of tropical waters, marked with luminescent patterns that pulsed slightly with each breath. Silver eyes regarded him with cold calculation beneath a crown of twisting metal that resembled frozen lightning. She was beautiful in the way dangerous things often are, a perfect predator. Commander Kai Jensen of Earth, he announced, bowing precisely to the depth his advisors had specified, respectful but not submissive. The Queen's lips curved into something between a smile and a sneer. The Terran military sends soldiers to conduct diplomacy? How primitive. Murmurs rippled through the court. Kai maintained his composure. I bring greetings from Earth's United Council, Your Majesty. We seek peaceful relations between our worlds. Peace. Queen Illyria's voice remained melodious despite her evident disdain. Your species expanded into 3 systems within a decade. Some might call that aggressive. We call it survival, Your Majesty. The same instinct that brings me here today. The Queen rose, her iridescent robes flowing like liquid starlight. She stood nearly a head taller than Kai, her posture radiating imperial authority. Your reputation precedes you, Commander. Before commanding diplomatic vessels, you led combat operations. A warrior who now speaks of peace. She circled him slowly. The Istrian Empire has stood for 9 millennia because we recognize strength. Words mean nothing without power behind them. Kai felt the shift in the room. This was deviating from the expected protocol. I propose a demonstration, the Queen continued. The trial of ascendancy in ancient Istrian tradition. You will face my chosen champion in honorable combat. The court erupted in excited whispers. Kai's translator implant struggled with the rapid crosstalk, but he understood enough. This was unexpected and potentially disastrous. With respect, Your Majesty, I came to negotiate trade agreements, not to fight. And yet how can we negotiate with those whose measure we have not taken? Queen Illyria's silver eyes flashed. Unless you doubt your abilities? It was an elegant trap. Refuse, and he appeared weak before a culture that prized strength. Accept, and risk diplomatic incident when her champion inevitably crushed him. I accept your challenge, Queen Illyria, Kai replied evenly, provided no lasting harm comes to either participant. The trial permits victory through yield or incapacitation without permanent injury, she explained with satisfaction. The ancient ways are quite civilized. Within an hour, Kai found himself in a circular arena beneath the palace, surrounded by tiered seating filled with Istrian nobility. He wore only his uniform pants and undershirt, having declined ceremonial armor that would have restricted his movement. Across the arena stood the Queen's champion, an Istrian female named Vex. She towered over him, muscled and confident, wielding a staff that crackled with contained energy. From her elevated viewing box, Queen Illyria addressed the crowd. Today we witness the human envoy's worth through our sacred tradition. Let the trial of ascendancy begin. As Vex charged forward, Kai settled into a defensive stance. The real battle, he knew, had nothing to do with combat, and everything to do with what came after. This binding is preposterous. Queen Illyria's voice echoed off the royal chamber walls. Her silver eyes blazed with fury as she paced, luminescent patterns rippling across her azure skin. Find a loophole. Immediately. High Counselor Thale, the eldest of her advisors, shook his head gravely. The trial of ascendancy is woven into our most sacred laws, Your Majesty. Commander Jensen defeated Vex without shedding blood, the first such victory in 7 centuries. The binding of crowns is automatic. 3 days had passed since Kai's shocking victory. Using the momentum of Vex's own attack, he had trapped her staff between his body and arm, then executed a precise throw that sent her tumbling across the arena floor. When she rose to continue, he stood waiting in perfect stillness, a tactical position that forced her to yield or risk serious injury. No one had anticipated a human could master Istrian combat philosophy. Perhaps we should consider the diplomatic advantages, offered Counselor Mira, the youngest member. This unexpected binding grants unprecedented access to human leadership. Illyria fixed her with a withering glare. You suggest I maintain this farce? Only until we negotiate more favorable terms with Earth, Mira replied cautiously. A guard announced Commander Jensen's arrival. The Queen composed herself instantly, her face becoming an imperial mask. Kai entered with an Astrian diplomatic escort. He had exchanged his uniform for formal attire that blended human and Astrian styles, a concession to their new arrangement. Your Majesty, he bowed. I understand this situation is unexpected. A remarkable understatement, Commander. Illyria gestured dismissively. You've studied our customs well enough to exploit them. I assure you, I had no knowledge of the binding of crowns when I accepted your challenge. His directness surprised her. Most courtiers approached with elaborate deference. Yet here we are, bound by ancient law. She moved to the window, overlooking the capital's crystalline spires. Your Earth Council must be pleased with this development. They're as shocked as your court, Your Majesty. My mission was to establish preliminary diplomatic relations, not to become. He paused, searching for the right word, entangled with Astrian royalty. Something in his candor softened her posture slightly. What do you propose, Commander? That we use this situation to our mutual advantage. The binding creates a framework for negotiations that might otherwise take years. Kai approached, maintaining a respectful distance. I suggest we begin with the disputed mining rights in the Caldera system. Illyria turned, studying him with renewed interest. This human didn't grovel or posture. He adapted. Very well. We will meet daily to address these matters while my scholars search for precedent to dissolve the binding. She raised her chin slightly. And we will make public appearances as tradition demands. Of course. Kai nodded. Perhaps we might begin by learning something about each other beyond titles and objectives. Later that evening, during a formal dinner with the court, Illyria observed Kai's interaction with her nobles. He navigated their subtle hierarchies with surprising skill, showing neither intimidation nor arrogance. Your species adapts quickly, she noted when they were briefly alone. A useful trait. Necessary for survival, Kai replied. Your people have mastered stability across millennia. That's equally impressive. She found herself unexpectedly engaged by his observations. Tomorrow you'll accompany me to the Temple of Celestial Harmony. The binding must be acknowledged in the sacred records. I look forward to learning more about Astrian traditions, he said. As he departed, Illyria caught Counselor Thale watching her with concern. She knew what troubled him. She'd spent more time conversing with the human than protocol required. That night, alone in her quarters, she reviewed Kai's personnel files. His military career was impressive, strategic victories against overwhelming odds. His diplomatic appointment wasn't merely political convenience. He possessed genuine insight. Know your adversaries, she murmured to herself, refusing to acknowledge that her interest might extend beyond strategic necessity. Across the palace, Kai sent an encrypted message to Earth. Binding creates unprecedented opportunity for alliance. Request permission to pursue negotiations from this unexpected position. The response came swiftly, permission granted. Proceed with caution. Some factions here view this as provocation rather than opportunity. Kai stared at the message, thinking of the Queen's fierce intelligence and the subtle shifts in her demeanor when she forgot to maintain her imperial distance. This mission had become far more complex than either of them had anticipated. The human must be eliminated. Lord Varen's voice was barely above a whisper as he addressed the small gathering in his private chambers. Each day the binding continues weakens our position with rival systems. For noble houses were represented in the clandestine meeting, united by their opposition to human expansion. The Queen grows. Tolerant of his presence, observed Lady Kira, her luminescent markings dimmed to avoid detection. Yesterday she actually laughed at something he said during the trade negotiations. All the more reason to act quickly, Varen insisted. The binding of crowns can be dissolved by death without dishonor to the crown. Outside the palace walls, unaware of the plot forming against him, Kai accompanied Queen Illyria through the capital's ancient market district. Their public appearances had become less formal over the past 2 weeks, though royal guards maintained a watchful perimeter. Your merchants seem uncomfortable with my presence, Kai noted as another vendor bowed nervously. You are the first human most have ever seen, Illyria replied. And rumors spread quickly about our arrangement. A small Astrian child darted forward suddenly, offering Kai a crystalline flower. "Is it true you defeated Vex without weapons?" the child asked boldly. Before the guards could intervene, Kai knelt to the child's level. "Sometimes the greatest strength comes from knowing when not to strike," he answered, accepting the gift. Illyria watched the interaction with veiled curiosity. This gentleness contradicted everything her people believed about humans and their supposedly aggressive nature. "An interesting philosophy from a military commander," she commented as they continued their procession. "I was a soldier because Earth needed defenders," Kai explained, "but I accepted this diplomatic mission because I believe in something beyond survival." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the palace. "Your Majesty, the Proximan ambassador has arrived early and requests immediate audience." Illyria's expression tightened. The Proximans were ancient trading partners but notoriously difficult negotiators. "We must return," she told Kai. This meeting was scheduled for next week. Back at the palace, the Proximan delegation awaited, tall, pallid beings with six-fingered hands and calculating eyes. Their ambassador, Tyvis, bowed with practiced precision. "Queen Illyria," he intoned, "and her human consort." "How unexpected." "Commander Jensen is Earth's diplomatic envoy," Illyria corrected smoothly. "Why have you arrived ahead of schedule, Ambassador?" "Circumstances change rapidly. We heard disturbing reports of human mining operations near our territories." Kai stepped forward. "Ambassador, I've reviewed the proposed mining coordinates personally. They're well within the buffer zone established by previous treaties." Tyvis's eyes narrowed. "You seem remarkably informed for someone so recently arrived in our region of space." "Commander Jensen has been thoroughly briefed on all relevant diplomatic matters," Illyria interjected, surprising herself with her defensive tone. The meeting deteriorated further as Tyvis made increasingly unreasonable demands. When he insisted on exclusive transit rights through the Caldera system, Kai caught Illyria's eye and subtly shook his head. "We will need to consult with our respective councils," Illyria announced, ending the audience. "You will have our response tomorrow." Once alone with her advisors and Kai, Illyria's composure faltered. "They're testing our alliance, seeing if they can drive a wedge between us." "I agree," Kai said. "The timing is suspicious. They arrived precisely when our binding was formalized in the temple records." High Counselor Thale looked troubled. "There is more. Our intelligence suggests assassination plots against Commander Jensen." Illyria's markings flared bright with alarm before she could control her reaction. "By whom?" "Internal factions, possibly with Proximan encouragement." Kai remained calm. "This isn't the first time I've been targeted." "You are under my protection," Illyria stated firmly. "An attack on you would be an attack on the crown itself." Later that night, as Kai returned to his quarters, a shadowy figure lunged from an alcove. Years of combat training took over as he dodged the energy blade and countered with a precise strike to his attacker's arm. Royal guards converged instantly, but not before a second assassin appeared behind him. Kai felt searing pain across his shoulder as the blade grazed him. Then, unexpectedly, Queen Illyria herself was there, her ceremonial staff crackling with energy as she disabled the second attacker with astonishing skill. "You're injured," she said, noticing the blood seeping through his torn garment. "It's minor," Kai assured her, suddenly aware of their proximity. For a moment, something unspoken passed between them, concern that transcended diplomatic necessity. "Take them for questioning," she ordered the guards, composing herself. "And summon the royal physician for Commander Jensen." As they walked toward the medical chambers, Illyria spoke quietly. "You fought well." "Again." "As did you," Kai replied. "I didn't realize Astrian royalty received combat training." "There is much you don't know about me, Commander." A hint of something warmer than formality colored her voice. "I look forward to learning," he said simply. For the first time since the binding, Illyria didn't immediately correct his presumption. The Lumina Festival transformed the palace gardens into a wonderland of bioluminescent plants and floating light orbs. It was the most significant celebration in the Astrian calendar, a night when social barriers traditionally dissolved. 6 weeks had passed since the assassination attempt. The captured attackers had revealed connections to Lord Varen, who now awaited judgment in the palace detention center. More surprising was evidence of Proximan involvement, which had strengthened the emerging human-Astrian alliance. Queen Illyria stood at the center of the festivities, her ceremonial attire more elaborate than any Kai had seen, layers of translucent fabric embedded with living light organisms, responding to her movements and emotions with subtle color shifts. "You appear transfixed, Commander," she observed as Kai approached. "The Lumina celebrates transformation, does it not?" he replied. "It seems fitting." She nodded, appreciating his growing knowledge of Astrian culture. "Walk with me. There is a tradition I must observe, and your presence is required." They moved through gardens where plants responded to proximity, unfurling luminous blooms as they passed. Away from the crowds, Illyria led him to a secluded grotto where a small pool reflected the 3 moons overhead. "The binding of crowns requires renewal during Lumina," she explained, suddenly appearing less assured than her public persona. "A simple ritual, but personal." Kai understood her hesitation. Their relationship had evolved from hostile formality to genuine respect, perhaps even friendship, but this moved into territory neither had acknowledged. "I'm honored to participate," he said quietly. Illyria removed her crown, placing it beside the pool. During Lumina, even the sovereign returns to essential form. She gestured for him to sit opposite her. "The ritual requires truth," she continued. 3 truths freely given, without calculation or diplomacy. The intimacy of this moment wasn't lost on Kai. "You begin, Your Majesty. Here, tonight, I am simply Illyria." She took a deep breath, her markings pulsing softly. "First truth. I respected you from the moment you defeated Vex without bloodshed. It revealed a wisdom I didn't expect from a human. Something shifted between them, a barrier dissolving like morning mist." "First truth," Kai responded. "I've studied your speeches from before our meeting. Your vision for the Astrian future was what convinced me to accept this mission." Illyria's eyes widened slightly. "You researched me personally?" "Thoroughly," he admitted with a small smile. "Second truth," she continued after a moment. "The scholars found precedent to dissolve our binding 3 weeks ago. I chose not to implement it immediately." Kai couldn't hide his surprise. "Why?" "That would be a fourth truth," she countered. "Your turn." He gathered his thoughts. "Second truth. Earth's Council initially wanted me to exploit the binding for maximum political advantage. I've been advocating for genuine partnership instead." The living lights in her attire shifted to deeper blues and purples. "Final truth," she said softly. "I have begun to see beyond human when I look at you." "I see, Kai." The simple statement carried profound significance in an empire built on species hierarchy. It was nearly a confession. Kai reached across the water, offering his hand palm up, a gesture he knew held special meaning in Astrian culture. "Final truth. I've dreamed of this moment. Not the ceremony, but being here with you as equals." After a heartbeat's hesitation, Illyria placed her hand in his. Where their skin touched, her luminescent pattern seemed to brighten. "The renewal is complete," she whispered. They remained there, hands joined across the water, neither willing to break the connection. Finally, Illyria spoke again. "There are still factions opposed to our alliance. The binding that began as my attempt to humiliate you has become a strength, but also a target. Together we're stronger than either of us alone," Kai replied. Later, as they rejoined the celebration, attendees noticed something different. The subtle distance between Queen and Commander had vanished. They moved in concert, their conversations flowing with natural ease. Counselor Mira approached Kai during a musical interlude. "She smiles more frequently now," she observed. "It suits her. The alliance brings her satisfaction," Kai replied diplomatically. "Indeed." Myra's knowing expression suggested she wasn't deceived. "Though I wonder if you realize how unprecedented this is. In 9 millennia, no Astrian sovereign has formed a genuine bond with an outsider." Across the garden, Illyria watched their conversation, and when Kai looked toward her, she didn't glance away as protocol might have dictated weeks earlier. Instead, she inclined her head slightly, an acknowledgement that something fundamental had changed between them. And the lights in her ceremonial attire shifted to a warm, golden glow that none in the court had seen before. The grand diplomatic chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from 12 star systems gathered for the historic summit. At the center table sat Queen Illyria and Commander Kai Jensen, united in their proposal for an interstellar coalition. 3 months had transformed their forced binding into the cornerstone of an unprecedented alliance. What began as humiliation had become the symbol of possible harmony between species long divided. "The proposed mining regulations are merely the beginning," Illyria addressed the assembly. "This coalition offers security and prosperity beyond what any single system can achieve alone." Kai observed her with quiet pride. She had evolved from an isolated monarch to a visionary leader. Their personal relationship had deepened alongside their political partnership, though both maintained public discretion. The Proximate ambassador rose in opposition. This coalition conveniently consolidates power between humans and Astrians. Some might call it an empire by another name. Some might, Kai acknowledged, standing to address the concern. If they focused solely on fear rather than possibility. Every system maintains sovereignty under these accords. As the debate intensified, an aide rushed to Illyria, whispering urgently. Her markings flashed with alarm before she controlled her reaction. A brief recess, she announced. We will reconvene in 1 hour. In a secure chamber adjacent to the hall, Illyria and Kai reviewed the intelligence with their security team. Extremists from both our worlds, Kai said grimly, studying the reports. Working together against us. Ironic, Illyria noted. Our enemies achieve cooperation while preaching division. The threat was immediate, a coordinated attack planned against the summit, aimed at destroying the nascent alliance in literal flames. We must postpone, Counselor Thale advised. Security cannot be guaranteed. No, Illyria and Kai spoke simultaneously. Postponement signals weakness, Illyria continued. We face this united. Kai nodded. But we must evacuate the other delegates. And reveal the plot? Thale questioned. Not the details, Kai clarified. A diplomatic excuse to move them to the secondary chamber while we remain here as planned. Illyria understood immediately. We become the bait. Yes, Kai met her gaze directly. Together. When the summit reconvened, only Illyria and Kai remained in the main chamber, visible on transmission screens to the delegates now secured elsewhere. They continued presenting the coalition proposal as though nothing had changed. Through their earpieces, they received updates as security forces intercepted infiltrators. One team remained unaccounted for. The final provisions ensure technological exchange benefits all member systems. Illyria continued smoothly, despite knowing unseen threats were closing in. Kai noticed at first, a subtle vibration in the floor. Illyria, he said quietly, abandoning titles. Left corridor now. They moved in perfect synchronization, just as an explosion tore through the chamber behind them. The blast knocked them forward, debris raining down as emergency barriers activated. Kai pulled Illyria into an alcove as armed infiltrators burst through the smoke, 3 humans and 2 Astrians working together in their hatred. Stay down, he whispered. Not a chance, she replied, already calculating angles of attack. Back to back, they faced there would be assassins. Illyria wielded a ceremonial staff she'd modified for combat, while Kai used techniques adapted from both human and Astrian fighting styles. When it ended, they stood breathless among unconscious attackers as security forces finally breached the sealed chamber. Are you injured? Illyria demanded, examining a cut on Kai's forehead. Nothing serious, he assured her. You. She shook her head, suddenly aware that the transmission to the delegates remained active. Their exchange, their coordinated defense, all had been witnessed by representatives of 12 systems. Rather than pull away, Illyria made a decision. She took Kai's hand publicly, turning to face the transmission sensors. Today you witnessed an attempt to prevent our worlds from coming together, she addressed the delegates, her voice steady. Yet here we stand, human and Astrian, proving that unity is stronger than division. Kai squeezed her hand, understanding the significance of this moment. The binding that joined us was unexpected, he added. But what grew from it was chosen. That choice is available to all our peoples. Hours later, after medical treatment and security debriefings, they stood alone on the palace's highest terrace overlooking the capital. 12 signatures, Illyria said with quiet amazement. All 12 systems joined the coalition. Sometimes people need to see possibility made real, Kai replied. She turned to him, silver eyes reflecting starlight. The binding can be formally dissolved now. Its diplomatic purpose is fulfilled. Is that what you want? He asked simply. Illyria's markings pulsed with colors Kai had learned to recognize, uncertainty, hope, and something deeper. The ancient law speaks of binding crowns, she said carefully. But what exists between us now binds something else entirely. Kai moved closer. In human tradition, we have a different kind of binding. One chosen freely rather than imposed by victory or defeat. Tell me, she requested softly. It begins with a question, he said, taking both her hands in his. One I'd like to ask, if you're willing to hear it. Illyria's luminescent patterns brightened to their most vibrant hue, the color of certainty. Ask, she whispered. Above them, the stars of two civilizations witnessed the moment when a binding born of pride became a union forged by choice, in the beginning of a new chapter for worlds once divided.